dark, kindle the spark in me.
Welcome to our next episode of Flicker. We've been taking a look at what we call the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaching about what life looks like in the reign of God. And last time we talked about the opening sentence of a passage we sometimes call the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor. Blessed are the poor in spirit, one version says. Or like we talked about last time, just blessed are the empty-handed. Today, Jesus sort of doubles down on that same idea, that where God's attention is focused, and therefore where our attention should be focused, is on the brokenhearted. The second beatitude, the second part of the Sermon on the Mount, often gets translated, blessed are you who mourn, or blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Now, at this point, I can imagine a lot of us going to hold on, hang on a second. It doesn't sound like it's a very good virtue to just be sad all the time. It sounds like, are you saying that Jesus says that his followers are supposed to be sad or try to be sad all the time? No, I think that is a really important question, but it reflects a complete misunderstanding that a lot of us carry. I know I certainly did for a long, long time, of what the Beatitudes are all about. We live so much in a culture that hears everything as reward for good behavior, or on the opposite, punishment for bad behavior. When we hear Jesus say something positive about anybody, an individual, a person, a group of people, we assume Jesus has something to say about their goodness or badness, about, oh, this is a reward for good behavior. And so when we hear Jesus say things like, blessed are the poor, we get all up, wait a second, Jesus, are you saying that it is morally superior to be poor than to be rich? Because I know people who are rich who are nice, and I know people who are poor who are jerks, and I know middle-class people who are both at the same time. That's not what this is about. This is not about Jesus offering praise or rewards for good behavior, at least not for the first half of the Beatitudes, but about Jesus identifying the ones who are front and center at God's attention, God's focus, God's special care, not who are the people God is rewarding. If our fundamental understanding of God is someone who sits up in heaven giving prizes like gold stars to the good-behaved people and sending coal in the stockings of bad people, we've switched out God for Santa Claus. That isn't the God that we meet in Jesus, and not the God we meet throughout the whole story of the Bible either. So when Jesus says something like, blessed are those who mourn, Jesus isn't saying that Christians are supposed to worship sadness or that it's a sin to be happy, but rather it's to say, you want to know where God's particular care and focus and attention is? It's the folks who are brokenhearted. I mean, again and again and again throughout the scriptures, you find moments or situations where somebody experiences loss or pain or hurt or suffering, and God's presence is showing up to meet their need, right? So Jesus interrupts a funeral at one point and stops the funeral procession because he sees the poor mother of the young man who's died and has compassion on her in her grief and comforts them. Or it's when God hears the cries of the enslaved Hebrews that God says, well, I see you're suffering, I must be punishing you for something. But no, sees suffering and goes, my role in this story, God's role is to relieve suffering by freeing them. God again and again and again is the one who is the agent of bringing comfort for those who hurt, lifting up the lowly, caring for the brokenhearted. That's at the heart of who God is. And therefore, if we're going to be people who live in light of this God, we're going to be people who look out for people who are hurting among us. We will be agents through whom God offers comfort for those who are mourning, or relief for those who are going through loss. But it's not that Jesus is saying if you want to get into heaven, you have to cry a certain number of tears in life or go through a certain number of losses in life. It's less about earning something from God and entirely about the character, the kind of God we have. Again, totally different from how folks in the ancient world imagined the Greeks and the Roman gods. There's Zeus and Apollo and Hera and all the rest. They were by and large jerks who didn't care about what was going on for mere mortals, or just came to mess with us for sport. Instead, what we find again and again is that Jesus says, you want to know who God is? God is the one when there's somebody who's always left out, or there's someone who's crying in the corner. God's the one going right to them to find out what's going on for them. So there is this party scene in the Bible, in the book of the prophet Isaiah. There's this fantastic, beautiful party scene in Isaiah 25 where the prophet imagines this great feast, this great party God's going to throw one day. And God's the host. God's the center of attention. God's gathered everybody there. There's the best food. There's the best wine. And in the middle of the party, the prophet says, God stoops and wipes away the tears of anybody who's there at the party. I don't know about you, but most of the time when I've been at parties, the people who are at the center of the attention, the person whose birthday it is, or the person who's throwing the wedding reception, they're all about them. They're the center of the attention, and they're not really paying attention to what anybody else is doing because they understand this is my day, this is my party. That's all well and good. But notice how different it is from the character of the God that Jesus talks about. The God we meet in Jesus, the God whose reign, whose kingdom, whose administration Jesus reveals and inaugurates, that God, when God's at a party, God's looking for the person who's crying in the corner, looking for how can I help that person? Blessed, Jesus says, are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are brokenhearted. That doesn't mean our job is to aspire to more sadness. How can I go through more sad things in life? It'll toughen me up. It's not about rewarding good behavior. It's saying, where are God's eyes turned? If you're comfortable, if you're fine, if you're happy, great. You're good. You're covered for the moment. God's always looking for those who are hurting, who are aching, whose hearts are broken, so that they can be bound up and mended. Once you get that about who God is, everything else starts to come together. So consider that. Keep your eyes open, not just for what's going well in your life, but when you enter a room or a situation, who's hurting here? And how can I be a part of God's work to comfort those who are hurting? There we'll get glimpses of what God's reign is all about. So join us here for more conversation as we keep going through the Sermon on the Mount here on Flickr. Bye.